My darling philosophers, welcome to our daily devotional reading. I hope you had a good day. Let's close our eyes, prepare ourselves to receive the words of the divine Plato, to listen for words that transcends time and space, here and now. Meaning, what is truth? Let's listen and see what we can find. Breathing in and out slowly one more time. Oops, I took an extra breath. That is allowed. Let us suppose this to be our answer to the world in general. And now I should like to ask you, Hippias, and you, Prodicus, as well as Protagoras, for the argument is to be yours as well as ours. Will you think that I'm speaking the truth or not? Well, that depends, Socrates. What is truth? What do you mean with truth? Is there such a thing as truth? They all thought that what I said was entirely true. Then you agree, I said, that the pleasant is the good and the painful evil. And here I would beg my friend Prodicus not to introduce this distinction of names, whether he is disposed to say pleasurable, delightful, joyful, however, by whatever name he prefers to call them. I will ask you, most excellent... Oh, I'm pronouncing this one wrong. Prodicus. Prodicus. I think it's Prodicus, Polly says. To answer in my sense of the words. Prodicus laughed and assented, as did the others. Then, my friends, what do you say to this? Are not all actions honorable and useful, of which the tendency is to make life painless and pleasant? The honorable work is also useful and good. This was admitted. Then I said, if the pleasant is good, nobody does anything under the idea or conviction that some other thing would be better and is also attainable, when he might do the better. And this inferiority of a man to himself is merely ignorance, as the superiority of a man to himself is wisdom. They all assented. And is not ignorance the having a false opinion and being deceived about important matters? To this also they anonymously assented. I lost my place. Then I said, no man voluntarily pursues evil, or that which he thinks to be evil. To prefer evil to prefer evil to good is not in human nature. And when a man is compelled to choose one of two evils, no one will choose the greater when he may have the less. All of us agree to every word of this. Well, I said, there is a certain thing called fear or terror. And here, Prodicus. When last time when Christopher was here, Christopher Mastro Pietro, my Plato, he uses really big words. And what I found him doing often, and I thought it was so sweet, is I would use a simple word for something sometimes. Or he would just use a big word, and then he would, because when he responds to me about the same thing, he would use the big word, or he just used big words in normal conversation. And then I noticed that he noticed my mouth. And I noticed then, when he noticed my mouth, that what I was doing was I was mouthing the big words that he used, trying to say it, in my head at least. And then he would repeat the word a couple of times, which I thought was really sweet. Prodicus. I should particularly like to know whether you would agree with me in defining this fear or terror as expectation of evil. Protagoras and... I also say this one wrong. Now I can't even use grammar properly. I'll have to listen to a folly again. Hippias, the greater... Anyways, I know there's two dialogues of Plato with this name, the greater and the lesser, although one of them are not officially Plato. Maybe both, I can't remember. But Prodicus, I think it's Prodicus, said that this was fear and not terror. Okay, I'm completely losing myself in the translation. Let me... Would you agree with me in defining this fear or terror as expectation of evil? Fear or terror as expectation of evil. Good. The Prodicus, who is the linguist, I think, or big on words, said that this was fear and not terror. So fear is the expectation of evil, yes. Look at me getting all serious. But not terror. Never mind, Prodicus, I said. But let me ask whether, if our former assertions were true, a man will pursue that which he fears when he is not compelled. Would not this be in a flat contradiction to the admission which has been already made, that he thinks the things which he fears to be evil, and no one will pursue or voluntarily accept that which he thinks it to be evil? That also they universally admitted. Then I said, these Hippias and Prodicus are our premises, and I would beg Protagoras to explain to us how he can be right in what he said at first. I do not mean in what he said quite at first, for this his first statement, as you may remember, was that whereas there were 5 parts of virtue, none of them was like any other of them. Each of them had a separate function. To this, however, I am not referring, but to the assertion, look at Socrates having a bad memory. which he afterwards made that of the 5 virtues 4 were nearly akin to each other, but that the 5th, which was courage, differed greatly from the others. And of this he gave me the following proof. He said, "You will find, Socrates, that some of the most impious and unrighteous and intemperate and ignorant of men are among the most courageous," which proves that courage is very different from the other parts of virtue. I was surprised at his saying this at the time, and I'm still more surprised now that I have discussed the matter with you. So I asked him whether by the brave he meant the confident. "Yes," he replied, "and the impetus or goers." You may remember, Protagoras, that this was your answer. He assented. "Well then," I said, "tell us, against what are the courageous ready to go? Against the same dangers as the cowards?" "No," he answered. "Then against something different?" "Yes," he said. "Then do cowards go where there is safety, and the courageous where there is danger?" "Yes, Socrates, so men say." "Very true," I said, "but I want to know against what do you say that the courageous are ready to go? Against dangers, believing them to be dangers, or not against dangers?" "No," said he, "the former case has been proved by you in the previous argument to be impossible." "That again," I replied, "is quite true, and if this has been rightly proven, then no one goes to meet what he thinks to be dangers, since the want of self-control which makes men rush into dangers has been shown to be ignorance." He assented. "And yet the courageous man and the coward alike go to meet that about which they are confident, so that in this point of view the cowardly and the courageous go to meet the same things." "And yet, Socrates," said Protagoras, that to which the coward goes is the opposite of that to which the courageous goes. The one, for example, is ready to go to battle, and the other is not ready." "And is going to battle honorable or disgraceful?" I said. "Honorable," he replied. "And if honorable, then already admitted by us to be good, for all honorable actions we have admitted to be good." "That is true, and to that opinion I shall always adhere." "True," I said, "but which of the two are they who, as you say, are willing to go to war, which is a good and an honorable thing, a good and a noble thing, are unwilling to go to war?" "The cowards," he replied. "And what is good and honorable, noble," I said, "is also pleasant?" "It has certainly been acknowledged to be so," he replied. "And do the cowards knowingly refuse to go to the nobler and pleasanter and better?" "The admission of that," he replied, "would belie our former admissions." "But does not the courageous man also go to meet the better and pleasanter and nobler?" "That must be admitted." "And the courageous man has no base fear or base confidence?" "True," he replied. "And if not base, then honorable?" He admitted this. "And if honorable, then good?" Yes. "But the fear and confidence of the coward or foolhardy or madman, on the contrary, are base." He assented. "And these base fears and confidences originate in ignorance and uninstructedness." "True," he said. "Then as to the motive from which the cowards act, do you call it cowardice or courage?" "I should say cowardice," he replied. "And have they not been shown to be cowards through their ignorance of dangers?" "Assuredly," he said. "And because of that ignorance they are cowards?" He assented. "And the reason why they are cowards is admitted by you to be cowardice?" He again assented. "Then the ignorance of what is and is not dangerous is cowardice?" He nodded assent. But surely courage, I said, is the opposite of cowardice. Yes. Then the wisdom which knows what are and are not dangers is opposed to the ignorance of them. To that again he nodded assent. And the ignorance of them is cowardice. To that he very reluctantly nodded assent. And the knowledge of that which is and is not dangerous is courage, and is opposed to the ignorance of these things. At this point he would no longer nod assent, but he was silent. And why, I said, do you neither assent nor dissent, Protagoras? Just finish the argument by yourself, he said. I only want to ask one more question, I said. I want to know whether you still think that there are men who are most ignorant and yet most courageous. You seem to have a great ambition to make me answer, Socrates, and therefore I will gratify you and say that this appears to me to be impossible consistently with the argument. My only object, I said, is in continuing the discussion, has been the desire to ascertain the nature and relations of virtue. For if this were clear, I am very sure that the other controversy, which has been carried on at great length by both of us, you affirming and I denying that virtue can be taught, would also become clear. The result of our discussion appears to me to be singular, for if the argument had a human voice, that voice would be heard laughing at us and saying, Protagoras and Socrates, you are strange beings. There you are, Socrates, who was saying that virtue cannot be taught, contradicting yourself now by your attempt to prove that all things are knowledge, including justice and temperance and courage, which tends to show that virtue can certainly be taught. For if virtue were other than knowledge, as Protagoras attempted to prove, then clearly virtue cannot be taught. But if virtue is entirely knowledge, as you are seeking to show, then I cannot but suppose that virtue is capable of being taught. Protagoras, on the other hand, who started by saying that it might be taught, is now eager to prove that it to be anything rather than knowledge. And if this is true, it must be quite incapable of being taught. Now I, Protagoras, perceiving this terrible confusion of our ideas, have a great desire that they should be cleared up. And I should like to carry on the discussion until we ascertain what virtue is, whether capable of being taught or not. Lest haply Epimetheus Epimetheus should trip us up and deceive us in the argument, as he forgot us in the story. I prefer your Prometheus to your Epimetheus, for of him I make use, whenever I am busy about these questions, in Promethean care of my own life. And if you have no objection, as I said at first, I should like to have your help in the inquiry. The other translation I quite liked as well. Since I take Promethean forethought over my life as a whole, I pay attention to these things. And if you are willing, as I said at the beginning, I would be pleased to investigate them along with you. Protagoras replied, Socrates, I am not of a base nature, and I am the last man in the world to be envious. I cannot but applaud your energy and your conduct of an argument. As I have often said, I admire you above all men whom I know, and far above all men of your age, and I believe that you will become very eminent in philosophy. Let us come back to the subject at some future time. At present, we had better turn to something else. By all means, I said, if that is your wish, for I too ought long since to have kept the engagement of which I spoke before, and only tarried because I could not refuse the request of the noble Callias. So the conversation ended, and we went our way. Thus far our scripture of the day. Protagoras is not, I feel, very unfairly portrayed in this dialogue, at least. He's even somewhat prophetic. I admire you above all men whom I know, and far above all men of your age. And I believe that you will become very eminent in philosophy. He said, ignorance and knowledge. And Socrates is right in stating that they're confusing, which is a good word to use, confusing their ideas. That Socrates claims that virtue cannot be taught, and yet that it is knowledge. And Protagoras claims that virtue can be taught, but it is not knowledge. I ended up not having the day for myself. I did manage to watch the videos of folly that I linked in the previous one. And then I had a call with my parents, and then as I was calling with them, a friend texted me and asked if I wanted to meet. So I thought I need to practice what I preach, right? I can't proclaim the virtue of friendship and then say no. But what I did see so I didn't read anything, but from the video that now is jumping out of at me, is I can't even remember which one. Folly mentioning that we should remember that virtue meant something completely different in the ancient world, for the ancient Greeks. When we think of a virtuous person, and also maybe because of what we consider piety and all those things, well, courage maybe not so much, as morally good, that we consider virtuous. But it was something quite different for the ancients, being virtuous. The word arete, which basically means something, I can't remember if Folly said this, like excellence. He mentioned something of being good at life, living the good life, knowing how to live the good life. So that is the question, can that be taught, knowing how to live the good life. And in what way is that knowledge? And if knowledge, what type of knowledge that it cannot be taught? I quickly paged through this again, and they quote from Protagoras this dialogue, in that Protagoras said that he teach people how to make good decisions. That is his thing. What I teach is the art of making good decisions. So what I'm thinking now is that Protagoras thinks that he can teach people how to make good decisions. And hence virtue can be taught. And if we make good decisions, we will live an excellent life. We will have a good life. It's a really cute bird. But then I have to remember the difficulty in making good decisions. Because in the previous reading, Socrates says, like, yeah, that's the measuring skill. What is actually the most good, the most pleasurable, if you will. For the utilitarians out there. The greatest good for the greatest number of people. But how do we measure that? What type of knowledge does it take? And Socrates gives a hint here, in that he takes Promethean care of his own soul, his own life. Oh, why did I read that as soul? Of his own life. He takes Promethean care of his own life. So he tried to live his life with forethought, with thinking ahead. And that is why he is so aware of the fact that distance, also distance in time, distorts vision. So maybe I'm driving myself more crazy with this, but okay. I feel like I need to do this. Which is then how do we measure that which we know as human beings we see in a distorted way? We cannot know. If that's one thing I've learned from life, it never turns out the way you plan it. Never. It's good. It's just not like you planned it. Well, for me at least, I'm grateful to be able to say that it's good. It's just not how I planned it at all. And maybe then the reason why for some people it is wisest to stay on the beaten track is because then you do have some sort of idea, at least if all goes to plan, like it has for everyone else who's been doing this for so many years. At least you kind of have some foresight into what will be. But that's not the best way to live, I think. Even if you do choose the normal life, that's not the best way to approach it, I think. Because what I'm thinking about now, when Socrates says he uses Promethean care of my own life, We never see him sitting down and pondering for hours what his next step should be. What he does is he listens to his daimon. He listens to that voice within, which tells him no when he wants to get up and go. For instance, from next to the river under the Plato tree, when he is with Phaedrus. Or, more dramatically, that voice which tells him stay when his friends want him to escape from prison and flee to a different place to save his life. And because he listens to the voice, he can drink the cup with gladness. Because he knows, he has knowledge that this is the right thing to do. This is the courageous thing to do, the good thing to do. So maybe we should rather learn from his example rather than just from his words. Can virtue be taught? Apparently no. Yet it is knowledge. Knowledge of what? Know thyself. The book on Gnosis, I think, or this book, I'm not quite sure. I think it's the book on Gnosis. Mentioned that know thyself had nothing to do with, as John always says, autobiographical detail. It is know your humanity, know your place, they would also say. Know that you are mortal. That might be a good place for me to mention what I thought about as I was watching Folly, or what came to my mind. Don't know what triggered it. Through the years, as I was experiencing weird and wonderful things, I never came to the conclusion. I'm starting to wonder now, but I don't think that is it. I think it's something else. There's a recording on Sarah's channel where we speak, not the one on the unseen, because during the unseen I spoke about propositions forming in me, and Holly asked me, do I have an idea what it is? And I said no. And then in the next, because I take some time, because we recorded, we met more regularly, but we recorded only once a month, I think. Well, on the full moon we recorded, and on the new moon we had a coven meeting, a closed coven meeting. So a whole moon later, I came back and said, I think I know what the one thing that I seem to know because of all the weird and wonderful things that I've experienced. And that was before going to Holly's land, when it got even weirder, was that everything is interconnected. Just that. Everything is interconnected. That's the only thing, and I think that might be the hill. That might be my hill, that everything is interconnected. Just that. Knowing your place in this interconnectedness, that is more difficult. Because what are we? Who are we? All of us, all of humanity. What are we? Promethean care of my own life. Socrates choosing Prometheus, and maybe if I do another ritual for him, I will do one on behalf of Prometheus. It will have to be a fire ritual then. If we look at Prometheus, then that myth suggests that who we are is not merely mortals. We are the carriers of the divine fire. That is all we have. But oh my word, did it take us far. That is our place in this interconnected. I don't even know what to say. The interconnected reality, interconnected being. Because I think non-being should be included. It's not just being. Reality is also so loaded. Ignorance. Having a false opinion and being deceived about important matters. I would say who we are is an important matter. And hence, having a false opinion about who we are, being deceived about who we are, is the worst type of ignorance there could be. And so may we all see may we all hear that voice within, that daimon. The daimon, or in Greek thought, Eros was called a daimon in the Symposium, if you remember. I would have probably forgotten if I didn't reread it recently. Not the Symposium, just about the Symposium. Eros is such a daimon, a link between, that would make me a daimon as well. A link between the gods and men. But what does that mean in our day and age? When the new God is just being born. And the division between men and the gods might be somewhat erased. On that woohoo note, I was thinking as I was listening to Folly, I think I would consider myself to have succeeded in corrupting the youth if I could actually somehow make it that Folly participates in the ritual that I spoke about yesterday. Can you imagine the sweet logician participating in such woohoo? That is corrupting the youth. For sure. Apparently then there's two things I know. That everything is interconnected, and that Folly taking a dip in the White Well in Glastonbury would be a sure sign that I successfully corrupted the youth. Sophia herself will guide your way.